Hello, my name is Scott Gampfer. I'm director of the CHS Library and History Collections here at Museum Center, and I want to talk for a little bit about the location of Union Terminal. I think everybody knows the Union Terminal was built in the Mill Creek Valley, and it's not very often today that people question why that was the case. I think it seems like a logical place to put a Union passenger depot, but actually the fact is that many different proposals were put forth over the years before the Union Terminal was built, and many different locations were looked at. And there's one in particular I want to talk about because I think people might find this interesting. It cropped up as early as 1903 and kept coming up again and again in various forms, and that was a location of a passenger depot on 3rd Street. There was a proposal put forth in 1910, in 1911, for the construction of a passenger station on 3rd Street between Main and Walnut, and with the concourse, the passenger facilities, the platforms and tracks and so on would have been between 3rd Street and the river. In fact, in this proposal, really the entire area where today Fort Washington Way is and the stadiums would have been a gigantic rail yard with warehouses and train facilities and so on, so it really would have changed the character of the city. Some boosters here in Cincinnati, bankers and members of the commercial club, paid to have a railroad planner by the name of John Bleekman actually come to Cincinnati and do a study for a location of a passenger depot on 3rd Street. And it was a fairly sophisticated study looking at the various costs associated with it and some of the problems that needed to be resolved, like elevating the whole thing so it wouldn't be flooded every year when the Ohio River flooded. But there was another interesting aspect to this proposal. They had picked up on this idea that was put forth as early as 1903 to have, as part of the train station, an office tower. And I actually have some images here of artist renderings of what this 3rd Street station might have looked like. And this is actually a blown up image from a color postcard from 1913, I believe, or 1912. And it shows this, what would have been this office tower, as part of the train station. Now, the idea was that there was a need for office space in Cincinnati at the time, and by building an office tower as part of the train station, the idea is it would generate revenue that would help offset the cost of the train station. And interestingly, the railroads were not consulted in this 1911 plan by Bleekman, and the railroads did not like the 3rd Street location. They preferred a Mill Creek location, so this plan in the end never went anywhere, although some pledges were raised toward the cost of building it. But the one thing that did spin out of this project was that many of the Cincinnati boosters and bankers liked the idea of building the office tower, and as a matter of fact, that part of the idea did move forward, and the Union Central tower that was built in 1913, which is at 4th and Vine, that actually was this idea continued forward. The train station was never built, and the tower was built a little farther to the west, but that idea spun out of this planning effort to build a station on 3rd Street. Even as late as 1923, some city boosters were still looking at a 3rd Street location, and they went to Cincinnati architect Harry Hake. In fact, George Dent Krebs, who is considered to be the father of Union Terminal, actually went to Harry Hake and had him do some sketches, and again we see a 3rd Street location, although it's half a block farther to the east. This is the passenger tracks and the concourse, and then we see this entire area between the passenger station and the river would have been warehouses, railroad facilities, manufacturing buildings, and so on. It would have completely changed the character of the city. The stadiums would never have been built there. None of that stuff along the riverfront would have been built had this plan gone forward. And interestingly, what finally, I think, killed this 3rd Street idea once and for all was the 1925 master plan, which clearly recommended the Mill Creek location for a passenger depot, and the railroads preferred the Mill Creek location for a variety of reasons. For one, 4 of the 7 railroads serving Cincinnati already had facilities in the Mill Creek, and there was land available a lot cheaper than this land would have cost the railroads. Although we might look at this now as being kind of an eyesore, and it would have blocked the view of the river and so on, at the time they actually considered this area, which was an eyesore in 1911, they considered that the building of this facility and rail yards and so on would have actually been an improvement to the way that the riverfront looked. And it probably would have been at the time, but it would have really changed the character of the city.